Tell me what's more satisfying than finishing a book you love in a single day. Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today's video is a pure and simple recommendation video. Today I'll be giving you recommendations of books you can read in a single day, and I'll be giving you recommendations across several different genres. I feel like some of the best books out there are the ones that you start and read in a single day and you just devour because it's just that good. Now I feel like there's a lot of factors that come into play when you're trying to finish a book in a single day, and a lot of that has to do with the length of the book, the pace of the book, and also just if you're enjoying the book. Now I feel like I've done a recommendation video like this before with a lot of the YA books that I've read in previous years, but given that my reading taste has changed a lot over the past year, I did want to do a recommendation video of all of the adult books across various genres that I think you can finish in a day. Now I'll be giving you about 2 to 3 book recommendations for every genre that I talk about, so just check out the timestamps below. Okay, so we're starting off strong with nonfiction, and I feel like I've come to appreciate nonfiction so much more in the past few years, and particularly I love memoirs and also really kind self-help books. So a memoir that I actually finished in a single day is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. I read this in January, absolutely fell in love with it, and it just captured me body and soul. I sat there at my desk with the book and the audiobook and I just listened for hours and hours, and the whole book just captivated me. This is a book that has a lot of content warnings, so be aware of that and also just be cognizant of that when you're going into the book. It is some heavy subject matter, but I think the payoff at the end and like the journey that you go through with the author is just so beautiful. This book goes through the author's experience of going through an abusive same-sex relationship, and one of the things that they talk about is the nuances between how we treat and even like prosecute heterosexual abusive relationships and how we treat same-sex abusive relationships. But this is also a story about losing yourself in a relationship and trying to find the way back to yourself. It is super powerful and will have you in tears by the end, and one of the really cool things about how this book is written is that it's told in these little vignettes, but also in these chapters that take a second person narrative. So you are addressed as you, but really the author's talking about themselves when they were in this relationship. So you were in this situation and you believed these things, and now they've come to realize so many other things. And it's so beautifully written and you will just, learn so much, and I highly, highly recommend this one. Next up, we have one that is pretty popular around the internet and just the general population, and that is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is, again, another heavy memoir, and like, if you're coming to my channel for the first time, I just need you to know I like a lot of sad books, and that's just part of my brand, I feel like, at this point. So bear with it, but I promise these books are amazing and it will be worthwhile if you read them. So this book is probably pretty familiar to a lot of people, but basically Jeanette McCurdy was a child actress on Nickelodeon, and she worked on the show iCarly and also Sam and Cat. And throughout her experience as a child actress, she went through some really hard stuff, and a lot of that had to do with the difficult relationship that she had with her mother and basically abusive relationship that she had. One thing I love about this book is the humbleness and humor and just thought that the author put into telling her story, and the way that she's talking about some really difficult things and she's talking about how she got through it or how she came to overcome it, and it is all told with this like slight humor and very human voice. If you're someone who loves dark humor, you're gonna love this. She just tells the story so well that you are just sucked into it and you want to be there for her, you want to understand her story, you want to go through the journey with her. The final nonfiction book rec that I have is How to Keep House While Drowning. This is a very, very short self-help book that I read earlier this year by the recommendation of Cindy from With Cindy, and I absolutely fell in love with this book. It's like maybe 2 hours on audiobook, and it's definitely worth a listen. I think the narrator's voice, the author's voice, is just so compassionate, even in the writing, and it was just such a calming read. The book was very different from a lot of self-help books that I've read before. This one wasn't trying to sell you a creed or tell you you need to do like XYZ to like live your best life. The content of the book was actually about like keeping house, so like how to do your different care tasks, which is the way she describes these different chores or housework. So like cleaning, dishes, laundry, all of that. How you can approach all of that with a sense of kindness and, forgiveness for yourself and everything that you are going through. One of the things I love about it is that she talks about not assigning morality to any of these tasks. Like, you're not a good person or bad person if you can't complete these things, and you are still valid for any way you find to make it work. This book is very open and inclusive and tries to consider lots of different perspectives, which I really, really appreciated. Alrighty, before we get into the next book on this video, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Shelf Savvy. So Shelf Savvy is this really awesome online tool that helps you get the best prices for the books that you love all in one place. You'll get personalized deal recommendations based off the books you love. You can enjoy deep discounts on over 40 different genres, from romance to thriller thrillers to fantasy and more by setting your category preferences. One of the things I really love about Shelf Savvy is their watch list. So you can add different books and authors to your watch list, and Shelf Savvy will watch for different deals on those books or authors or like upcoming books that they have, and you can get them at the best price. You'll get notified when those books go on sale, and you'll never have to pay full price again. Shelf Savvy watches for deals on both print and ebooks, but they've recently also launched audiobook deals, which I love because y'all know I listen to audiobooks so much. I think Shelf Savvy is really great, and with the state of the world and the economy these days, I think all of us are trying to save an extra few bucks here and there. So you can go fill up your bookshelves on a budget with Shelf Savvy and use the link down below to sign up for free and start getting personalized deal recommendations. I hope you guys can get some great deals on the books that I mentioned today, and now let's get back into the next book on this list. Okay, next up we're going to talk about some general fiction / literary fiction that I absolutely adore. So first up I have Kim Ji-young, born 1982 by Cho Nam-ju. This is one that I picked up a few years ago and fell in love with. It is such a short book, but so freaking powerful. I honestly think this is a book that you should just go into not knowing too much, but it's definitely one for everyone to read. Basically, it's about this woman named Kim Ji-young, born 1982, who lives in South Korea. And the book gives you a full 360 on her life, the different parts of it. So she's a mother, she's a daughter, she's a sister. You're seeing the different people who factor into her life and how all of them contribute to what is going on mentally with her and also what's bringing her to a breaking point. The book is written so well, and one of the impressive things about it is that it shows you the way that all of these things in her life are not just unique to her, they are part of a universal experience that women face, and parts of it are like kind of particular to her living in South Korea, but a lot of it like feels very relatable to like any woman out there and all the different pressures that society gives us. It's fantastic, the social commentary is amazing, and you won't regret like taking the time to just like knock this out in a few hours. Okay, next up we have Bunny by Mona Awad. This is one that people keep trying to recommend to me, and it's funny because I'm like, I already read this one and I loved it. It's great. It's not my favorite book ever, but I do think it does so many things amazingly, and I know it's a fan favorite amongst many people on BookTube. This book is a bit of a dark academia, a bit of a satire, it's a bit of a psychological situation, and it does so many interesting things, and I feel like it's one of the more original novels I've read out there. It's definitely a book that I feel like you need to go into without knowing too much, and you'll just be sort of weirded out and astounded, but also so intrigued, and I think that's part of the charm of this book. The reason I think you can finish this in a single day is because you just want to know what's like happening, and I think the absurdity of the book just makes you want to keep reading. It's quite short as well, and by the end of it you'll be like questioning everything that you read, and honestly to this day I'm like, did I read that at the end? Like, did that happen, or am I imagining that? And I always just feel like I need to go back and reread it, and it was such a fun time. The next book that I have is one that's actually coming out in May, and that's Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is a book that I've been anticipating for ages, ever since I heard about it, and you guys should definitely go pick it up when it comes out in May. This book is a mega satire. It follows a white woman author who has not had great success, but her friend, you could say, who's an Asian American author, has had a lot of success with her really amazing literary novels. That friend has an unfinished manuscript, and she dies suddenly in a weird situation, and the main character, June, ends up having the opportunity to steal that manuscript, finish it herself, and decides to publish it as her own, and basically engages in a form of yellow face, you could say. And this book sort of tells the story from her perspective and shows you all of the ways that she deludes herself into thinking that she is the hero of this story. And the satire is done so well. And I was honestly just rolling over laughing for most of this, and then, you know, partly angry because this is stuff that I've seen in publishing for years when I worked in publishing. And I think by the end of it, you'll be both angry and also like astounded, and it's also a great laugh. The reason I think you can read this in one day is because it's told in this like first person perspective, and just like the delusion of the character just makes you want to keep reading, because you're like, how can she keep justifying all these terrible things that she does? And it's just freaking hilarious. Like, I just wanted to know what was gonna happen in the end, and it was fantastic. So highly recommend, go check it out when it comes out in May. The next book that I want to recommend is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This one is another satire, I would say, and it takes a perspective of multiple characters, one being a sort of deluded white woman character. If you watch my recent video where I tier ranked book tropes, like deluded white woman character is like one of the most satisfying things for me because it just speaks to like something about humanity right now. But anyways, this book has one of those characters, and overall I feel like this book is also one that you need to go into without knowing too much, and you will just be like along for the ride. But this is definitely one of those literary fictions that has so many layers to it and so many things to like unpack and discuss, and I think the way that the characters operate is just so interesting. When I read this, I actually read it for a work book club, and we had so many like scenes that we were dissecting and talking about and discussing, so I think it's definitely one that will make you think. But it's also one that I think is a fairly quick read and a pretty short book and will have you like wanting to get to the end of it. I don't think the pace is by any means like super fast, but I think the way that you are following these characters, you just want to like know what's gonna happen next and like see why they think these things, and it's just freaking hilarious. This book confronts issues of race, class, privilege, and so many other topics, and I freaking loved it. Okay, next up I have a few romances, and I say romances very loosely because I feel like these three books that I'm gonna recommend aren't necessarily just romances, like they're more literary fictions, I would say, or general fictions, and have a strong element of a romance. And personally for me, I feel like a lot of the romances that I've read in my life that I really enjoyed are books that you could read in a single day, which is one of the awesome things about romance as a genre. And obviously not all of them are like that, but I think there's a good decent amount that are like that, which are just awesome. So yeah, I feel like you could go pick up so many, but I'm just gonna mention these particular ones that I think are great and also have some other stuff going on. So first up I have Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, and this is one that I constantly come back to because I think it is such a beautiful read and just like a hug in the form of a book. This is a story about finding your place in the world and finding love, and it follows our main character Grace Porter, who has finished a PhD in astronomy and ends up on this girls trip to Las Vegas with her friends. And she's the straight A student, the overachiever that has always like planned everything down to the minute, but when she accidentally gets drunk and married to another woman while on the trip, she has to reckon with her actions and like the consequences of it, and also like figure it all out. And one of the things I loved about this book was the way that the character thought she had everything figured out and then ends up going through this moment of like, you know, figuring it out and realizing what she really wants out of life and out of love. This book is just so heartfelt, and you will feel for the main character and for the love interest and the other characters in the story. And honestly, I came out of it and was like, that was such a cathartic read, I think, if you are ever going through like a struggle and you need to like feel like you're not alone. Okay, the next book that I have here is a pretty popular one, so I won't spend too much time here, but that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The TV show recently came out, which I still need to watch, but if you guys have watched it, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. But this is a book that I read quite a few years ago when it first came out, and although it looks deceptively long, it's actually not that long because majority of the book is actually told through dialogue. So basically at the start of this book, someone is coming to these people who were part of this like fictional band in the 70s, and they're doing this documentary and getting testimonies from each member of the band and also other people that were around them during like the height of their career. And so of course there's all this drama and all this like throwback charm to it, but I think this book is such an easy one to like read in a single day because you'll be so like captivated by these characters telling their stories and how like their stories don't match up sometimes and how they like remember things differently. And if you're gonna read this book, I highly recommend the audiobook because I think it adds like another dimension to the story, and just hearing like the different narrators perform each character is fantastic. When I read this book, I did read it in like a day or two, and it was just fantastic, and I was so captivated, so I wanted to know what happened by the end. The next book is one of my all-time favorites ever that everyone needs to go read, and that is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. So I'm recommending this one because I did in fact read this one in like a single day or two at most, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So I'm recommending this one because it's definitely a love story that will just captivate you and draw you in, and you will not be able to stop reading. I don't remember if I read this this in a single day or not, but I think even if I didn't, it was because I had like other things I had to do, so that's why I had to stop reading, but otherwise I would have just sat there all day reading this book. This is a romance that has so many other layers to it and features two love interests that have fully formed characters and are so three-dimensional that you cannot help but feel for them. Basically, this book follows two Black writers, and years ago when they were like teens, they had sort of met and been together for 7 days in June and fell in love and had this like incredible moment in their lives, but they were ripped apart for reasons beyond them and for certain mistakes. And 15 years later, we are meeting them again, and the two of them are at like this writing conference, and they are going through this like tumultuous week in June again. And it's really beautiful because you are hearing the way that they have been sort of pining after each other for years and how their lives have changed over the past 15 years and how they've been writing to each other in their books over the past 15 years. So she's like a romance supernatural writer, and then he is a literary fiction author, and just the whole setup of this book was just so beautiful. And then seeing how they fell in love and how things, you know, came apart and then how they're trying to reconnect was so beautiful. This is like second chance romance at its best, and it was done so well. Now, although this book is filled with beautiful, uplifting moments and moments filled with hilarity but also Black joy, I do recommend looking up content warnings for this one because there are some stuff that could be like triggering from some of the like in the past chapters, so just keep that in mind. Alrighty, next up I have a couple thrillers, and I'm gonna give the same caveat that I gave for the romance books. These ones are just a couple thrillers that I have read that I think are like perfect to read in a single day, but I do think thrillers as a genre, again, like romance, often have quite a few books that can be read like very quickly, and that's like the charm of the genre. Like, you want to be reading them quickly and you want to find out what happens next and you want to get to the end. So I definitely think there's like way more thrillers that you could pick up that you could read in a single day, but these are just like a couple that I thought of that I think you might want to check out. Okay, so starting off with one that's actually not a favorite for me and not one that I particularly love, but I can see the merit of it and I can see how a lot of people would enjoy it, and I encourage you to check it out if you do like thrillers, just because it is a book that like will very quickly get you to be reading the full thing in a day. So that book is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I read this for a video earlier this year. At the end of it, I didn't really love it overall, but I do think as I was reading, it was quite entertaining and like I wanted to know what was gonna happen next. Like, I was captivated, like I was on the edge of my seat and I needed to know what happened next, and even if I didn't care at some points, I was like, I need to know, you know? This book has all of the things. It's got the ticking clock, the multiple murders, it's got that closed house atmosphere and like the spookiness of a murder mystery, and it'll definitely have you wanting to get to the end of the book. Although this wasn't my favorite, I still read majority of it in a single day, and then I only had to finish it the next day because I had things to do, but otherwise probably would have finished it in a day. The next thriller that I have is actually a personal favorite of mine. Like, if I had to point to a thriller that I absolutely enjoyed, it's this one, and that is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is a thriller that I feel like has so much drama to it that makes it so much fun. This book basically involves a reunion situation of this like tight-knit group of friends seeing each other again many years after university, and when they were in college they were really close and like, you know, they had all these secrets and like drama and all of that. But amidst all that, there was also a murder mystery. So one of the friends was actually murdered, and everyone thinks it was like one person, but now there's like this possibility that, you know, it might have been someone else in the group. So at this reunion, they're sort of confronting all of the drama and like, you know, bad blood from over the years, but they're also trying to figure out like who killed this person in the group. One of the really fun things about this book was that it's told in dual timelines. So you get the parts from when they're back in college, and then you also get parts from the reunion in the current day when they're trying to figure things out. And like they're telling these like long-winded stories about like what happened back then, and then you're like finding out things. And so it's just really fun, and you get like different stories from like the different characters, which just makes it so interesting. I was not only on the edge of my seat like wanting to know like who the murderer was, I was also just like captivated by like all of the drama that happened between the characters. Like, aside from the murder drama, there's like other drama that they have, which was so fun. Alrighty, the final genre that I have for this video is fantasy, and I feel like this one is definitely a hard one to find books you can read in a single day, because oftentimes fantasies are like long-winded and like they have a lot of world building to go through, or they're set over like multiple books. But every now and then there's like a book that comes along and I'm like, yes, this was so satisfying, and it was just a very short and nice experience. So first up, I have a novella actually, and that is What Moves the the Dead by T. Kingfisher. I say fantasy, but this is like sort of horror fantasy, I would say. Like I'm kind of giving you a blanket of speculative fiction. This one is a retelling of an Edgar Allan Poe short story, and the author sort of extrapolates from that and does some changes and stuff. And basically our main character is a retired soldier who receives word that their good friend Madeline is dying. So the main character returns to this ancestral home where their friend is, and they are trying to figure out what's going on, and there's like some spooky things going on, and all of it just has an air of mystery to it, and it's honestly so fun. It was definitely a quick read with some fun characters, and overall just like a nice spooky time. I think if you love the vibe of horror novels and like you just want it in a shorter experience, this is definitely one to pick up. So much of this was just so atmospheric but also kind of gross, which I really enjoyed. Alrighty, and then the final two books that I have for this video are actually by the same author, and I think she just has a skill for writing standalone sci-fi fantasy speculative fiction, and I just cannot recommend her books enough. And these two in particular are ones that I feel like you can finish in a single day, and they're like captivating and well-paced, and you just want to keep reading. So that author is Silvia Moreno Garcia, who I absolutely adore, and this is her book Certain Dark Things, and this one is again a bit of a horror supernatural situation. It's set in like an alternate kind of future version of Mexico City, and it involves vampires. It has been described as a neo-noir that reimagines vampire lore, which I think really sums it up. And in this book, like there's different types of vampires, like they come from different clans and they have like different abilities or like, you know, weaknesses and that kind of thing, which makes it really interesting. This book combines that noir mystery with like the criminals and the cops and all of that with the idea of like vampires, and with a main character who's a vampire on the run. I absolutely love the way it combines vampires, which we've traditionally seen in a lot of like romances or like chosen one stories as like, you know, villains and that kind of thing, and takes them and puts them in this like kind of real life situation. Like you could see this happening if vampires existed, and it's just really cool. Although the beginning of this book might be a struggle to get into, once you're in, it's like really nicely paced and you just want to figure out what's happening and you just want to come along for the journey with our main characters. Alrighty, and the final book on this video is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is actually the first of her books, I think, that I read, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Although I didn't read this over a single day myself, I do feel like had I had the chance, I could have like binged it in a single day, and I personally just loved it a lot. This is a book that's classified as fantasy because some of the main characters have like slight magical abilities, but aside from that, not much of the story is like really fantasy. It's really this like Jane Austen type Regency era novel. It's not actually Regency era, but like it has that vibe to it, and you're just like sucked into, you know, the romance of the characters and like who's gonna end up with who, and also just like the propriety and like finding a husband and like all of these different things. But it's like told in this very interesting way. I feel like this is a book that you shouldn't know too much about before getting into it, but it's definitely like that charming tale with like scandal and betrayal, but also like love, and you have like 3 different main characters that you're following. And I think personally for me, I went into it thinking it was going to end one way, but it actually ended a different way, and like the story went in a different direction than I expected, which was like really refreshing. And with that, we have all of my book recs for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you found some new books to pick up to binge in a single day, or just some quick reads to pick up in between all of the other life things that you've got going on. I would love to hear from all of you if you're planning to pick up any of these books, or if you have any recommendations of books you can read in a single day for any of these genres. I'm always on the lookout for some more quick reads that will just get me back into the mood, especially when I'm in a reading slump, so leave those recommendations down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and definitely go check out my Instagram and TikTok in the description down below if you want to get regular updates on my life and what I'm reading. If you want to see more videos like this one, then check out my playlist of book recommendation videos, and I will see you guys in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!